What is it about humans that makes us understand symbols so well? For example, this I love you is a very simple phrase, but why can I understand it through symbols? Clearly, this is not a writing system, it's a pictorial system, but you just understood it. That means there's something intrinsic about being human that makes us ready to understand symbols. If we look at the Proto Sinaitic script, which came from ancient Egypt, you can see that the letters that are here are also there in ancient Egypt. It's not fully known who made these letters, but we do know that it's a cross pollination between the Canaanites and the ancient Egyptians. And from the Canaanites, it really took off. Before we talk about what each letter means, we have to consider something very important, which is that the Canaanite language and the ancient Egyptian language belong to the same group. And this group is called Afro Asiatic. This made it simpler to transmute or translate words from one letter to the other, from one language to the other. For example, the letter Ma in ancient Egyptian becomes Mem in Canaanite. With this floor set, I can show you that the ancient Egyptians wouldn't have taken too much time to learn the Canaanite language, and the Canaanites wouldn't have taken too much time to learn the ancient Egyptian language because their languages are so similar. It's like someone who speaks English learning Dutch or someone who speaks Dutch learning German. This simple symbol for a cow, which was related to Hathor, was then changed into a bull and became the word Elp, meaning a cow or a bull. And as the word for Hathor is Hut in ancient Egyptian, you can see that it's not a direct translation. The male version would have been Har, so it's definitely not a direct translation. For the letter B, we have a floor plan. Some people make the mistake of thinking that this is a house, like a hut, but it's a house as a floor plan from top view. This tells us that the people who were writing the ancient Egyptian script, who gave it to these people, were a bit higher than just ground workers. The ancient Egyptian word for this floor plan would be per. And as you can see in the Berber language, it's her, which tells us this is the full word and not an alphabet. Instead, it's an alphabet with a vowel and another consonant at the end. This tells us it was in fact the Canaanites who changed this word into bait, a word that would be unfamiliar to the ancient Egyptians. The letter C came from this ancient Egyptian throwing stick, which the word is kind of lost, but it meant Gimel in the language of the Canaanites, and by extension, G. This door that the semantics called Dalith, meaning door, is the foundation of the letter D. And as you can see, if you turn it on the side, it looks like the letter D. This man with his arms raised in his air is for the letter H. In ancient Egyptian, this was the symbol of Ka, and it was also the symbol of Ha, which both of these words mean spirit. The Canaanites took this word and made it their own. We go down this path for every alphabet or most alphabets in the English language. What is lesser known is that the Hebrew language, Arabic, and so many other alphabets use the same foundation of the Canaanites and the ancient Egyptians. But there are language systems that predate the ancient Egyptian alphabets, and these are cuneiform and the Indus Valley script, and they're thought to resemble syllables in the same way that these alphabets did, except that they did this way earlier.
The word ends, there's also no punctuation. So it does put a lot of pressure on the reader in order to figure out what you're doing, which can make it tricky, but it can also make it fun because it leaves a lot of openings for different interpretations, and you can kind of wiggle around with it. And you'll see it can be quite enjoyable. Let's start off by going over the 4 phases of bringing an inscription from the cuneiform into English. So phase 1 is we have our cuneiform signs, which I have these 5 signs written out for you right here. Next, we're going to do what's called a transliteration. In a transliteration, you write the syllable which each sign represents below, and you don't combine them together. It's basically just recognizing each sign. Now, another important thing is that a sign isn't necessarily just one thing. A sign could be 4 different meanings. It could be ba, ka, ma, It's kind of one of the things where it also puts stress on the reader, where you have to figure out, all right, based off the context of what I think these signs are, this one would fit, so I'm going to choose this meaning. So I'll start off by transliterating this inscription I have for you right here. So this first sign is the ha sign. So I'll write ha. Now, this sound is different than the English H. It's more of a guttural sound. This sign is the sign. And when we do a transliteration, what we'll do is we'll put dashes in between in order to separate each syllable. This sign is the mu sign. Mu. This is the ra sign. Ra sign. And this last sign is tricky because it has multiple meanings. This sign is B, pi 2, and kosh. So this letter, which you can see on the end, is called a sheen. And it's going to be notated by putting a small U over the S. And it's going to give an SH sound like sh. There's also 2 other additional letters in the Akkadian alphabet which we don't have in the English alphabet. The second one is a tzadeh. The tzadeh is written like an S with a dot underneath. And that is going to make a TS sound like ts. And the last letter is a T with a dot underneath. And this is an emphatic T. So where a normal T you would just make a T sound, this is going to get a little bit more emphasis, and it's going to have a stop afterwards, like T.
Unlike the Canaanites, who eventually used only one letter to resemble the alphabet for real, these ancient symbols stuck with this breaking of words, which before, to resemble something, you would have to use that exact thing. So a door, you draw a door. A cat, you draw a cat. It is only when they introduced something called the rebus principle, where you use the word itself. And as you saw in ancient Egyptian, they used the whole word. So per would be a door. So if you wanted to say perfect, you would use a word that's closest to the word fict in ancient Egyptian. And so this was the same in Sumerian, and it's thought to be the same in the Indus Valley. And there's languages like Chinese that has the same thing, Japanese script, and the American script has the same thing. Strange. It's strange that these places all develop this rebus principle. The only thing we can think of is that it must just be obvious once you have invented the pictorial scripts. have no idea why it's been invented so many times. But obviously, you get to the alphabet, and then these alphabets get transliterated into letters in English. And so now other languages that didn't have letters, like Chinese, like um, Sumerian, we can now write it in letters. But this is a modern invention, but it's was always well on its way.